AWCA, Mike Amori. Welcome to the Week 3 update. We looked at very famous game, the Louis Paulson Paul Morphy game, 1800s. And we showed the game not just to see a classic game and all the great ideas that came along with it, but we studied the game to work on a couple of concepts. We were talking about imbalances, and we were also talking about two key words: nominal value and relative value. I will put them in the blog, and I will also explain them as we go through this game. All right, let's just get into the moves, and then I'll talk about how we use those concepts in class. So the game with Paulson playing white, let me flip the board so that we have Morphy with the black pieces. Here we go. And Paulson just played the move bishop to b5. And in these four-knight setups, you have to watch out for the center fork trick, which Morphy actually allowed after bishop to c5. And we're not sure. I've heard coaches and people who've analyzed this game say that sometimes players don't like going for the center fork trick, which would be here, knight takes e5, because they were a little uncomfortable with the counter sacrifice, bishop takes f2. Because, you know, black knows they're going to give a piece up for a pawn, and white's going to do the same thing. And to play this way, let me flip the board again for you. You're playing white, right? And your opponent just took a pawn on f2. Now, why did they do it? Let's back up. Let's look at this from white's perspective. When you play the center fork trick, you're giving up temporarily, you're giving up a minor piece for a pawn. You just take it here. And the normal way to respond to the center fork trick is to just take the piece for the pawn, and then you'll see here that white can get the pawn and the piece right back. So it's just this little swap. And the idea of doing the center fork trick is to get this kind of position as white with having a center pawn here that's going to control more of the center than black center pawn. That's why they call it the center fork trick. But I think Paulson was a little afraid, or maybe not. I don't really know. But a lot of players sometimes think this is a good answer for black, because black figures, hey, you know, I'm gonna trade a pawn and a piece, so why don't I just do it on f2? This way the king can't castle. The problem is, if you go for this way and then take the piece, you're going to get hit with d4. And even though you check me, the correct square for my king is g1 as white. And I know it looks really, really kind of funky to have the king buried down here, but this is good for white. And if you pause your video and stare at it, you can do some serious imbalance work here. Number one, the pawn structure is slightly different, but the key imbalance is going to be the fact that white has the bishop pair. And pay very close attention to this dark squared bishop. There's no counterpart on the other side. And for some of the younger students in the class, you notice that I put these videos together for both classes at this point. I like to do that the last session of the year because, you know, you guys have made a lot of progress. If I'm playing chess against my opponent and I have a dark squared bishop and they don't, and there's this many pieces left on the board, I'm going to try to take advantage of those dark squares. This is an unopposed bishop. This thing is going to be very, very difficult to deal with. I'm going to easily kick this knight out with a move like h3. Later in the game, after I develop, protect my center. My king may come to h2, and then I'm going to activate my rook. This is very easy to play for white, believe it or not. So maybe Paulson, instead of going for the center fork trick, maybe he didn't want that idea to happen, so he castled first. And Morphy had absolutely no fear of the center fork trick, so he allows it by castling. And at this point, Paulson goes for it. But Morphy plays an interesting move. Rather than take the knight and allowing the center fork trick, he develops with tempo. Now, perhaps not the best move. Maybe he should have just went for the center fork trick the regular way. And here Paulson, instead of just retreating the knight back to f3, decides to make a trade. And perhaps not his best choice. He takes the knight. Now, he is going to be up a pawn after this, but it's temporary. because when Morphy takes back, and again, how do we take back? You take with the D pawn because it opens up the bishop here. All right? So we looked at this from the white side for a moment, but let's do a little bit of a flip. Here's what it looks like as black. What do we have? Now, let's talk about those two words, nominal and relative. The nominal value of a piece, I want you to think of it like a piece in a museum. It's just hanging on the wall. It's not in a chess position. You have no idea what the piece is going to do next. It's just hanging there like a picture. If it were the queen, you would say it's worth 9. The rook, 5. The bishop, 3. 3 for the knight. The nominal value just means the value we give the piece in a given situation playing chess. We don't know what the situation is, but in general, the queen is worth about 3 minor pieces. Relative value, this is much more important, is the value of the piece in the position you're looking at. So for example, if I asked you to compare the relative value between the 2 dark squared bishops, clearly this bishop on c5 has a higher relative value. The nominal value is 3 apiece. Okay? Now, in this position, black is down a pawn. But if you put this on a computer, the computer is going to say the position is equal. Why? Well, number one, the bishop is being attacked here. And Paulson retreated the bishop to c4. And here Morphy decided, I guess, taking a little bit of a risk by playing the move b5, because he is moving a pawn on the side of the board without developing a piece, but not the end of the world. You know, he does force the black of the white bishop to make a decision. Goes to e2. We talked about in class moving the bishop to d3, blocking the center pawn, probably not best. And don't forget that this pawn could move at any point and kick the knight away. So here Morphy just collects his pawn. And there's a couple of trades that happen on this square. And now here, this is a real important moment in the game. Paulson took the tempo right away with bishop f3. And Morphy now plays a rook drop. Yeah, that was the term that Sophie in class came up with. She called rook e6 a rook drop, because normally when you see a rook on a square like e6, especially the third rank, most of the time it comes from the back rank. You know, black castles, they play rook e8, and then at some point they lift the rook. You see how I'm lifting it from the bottom, lifting it to e6? But that's not what happened. The rook came from here. So Sophie, I thought that was pretty cool. I've never heard that before. She called it a rook drop. And it's there to protect the pawn. Not sure that Paulson was aware of just how strong this rook was here. It's clearly not just for defense. It has the option of sliding left or right, and if it slides to the left, it's going to be attacking the king. Okay, and here's where Paulson played pawn to c3. His idea is very, very simple. He wants to play d4. But that's when Morphy just stuck his queen on d3. Such a cool move, because when you play it, you know, let's talk about the relative value of the pieces. Look at the queen side for white. The rook in the corner, kind of boxed in with only one square. You can't even go there now. You'll lose the rook. The bishop, no moves. The queen tied up over here. So this queen d3 move just kind of cramped everything. And here, it was pretty clear that Paulson should have challenged the rook right away. Try to break out of this, you know? But I want to take you back for a minute. I want to take you back to when he played bishop f3. His idea was pretty clear. Let's hit the rook, gain a tempo, and play chess. But what if instead of doing that, he played the move c3 now? There could have been a big difference, because if black gets worried about this move d4, he could always play a move like bishop d6 and now play bishop f3. And the idea is, after the rook retreats to e6 or e8, wherever it retreats, white is going to be able to play d4 someday. Not taking a pawn. That looks great, but it's not as great as it really looks. Can you see what black can do here? Pause the video. Come on, Luca, pause the video. There we go. How do you get the pawn back? Yeah, bishop takes check. Pretty good move, right? If king takes, queen d6. Always look for every check and capture. So maybe, you know, back here, it would have worked out a little better if c3 was played right away, but it wasn't. So instead, when he plays bishop f3 and the rook drops out, after c3 now, it allowed the move queen to d3. Okay, so Paulson doesn't sit there quietly. He lashes out. He attacks the bishop. And this was such a cool moment. We had so many great answers in all the classes as to where this bishop should go. Should it go to f8, e7, d6? And Morphy found the move bishop b6, and it kept the pressure along the g1, a7 diagonal. A really, really good move. And now pawn a4. Paulson has to play somewhere on the board. He might as well play on the queen side. Morphy takes. Queen takes. At least he gets the queen out of the game. And here, Gary Kasparov and a lot of modern computers, a lot of players who have analyzed this game, and there's been thousands, like the move bishop to b7 because it prevents White's idea of trading queens, putting the queen on a6, which would have been a really nice idea. To try to get the black queen off the board. Just get her out of here. She's cramping everything. In the game, Morphy put the bishop on d7, and it's here it's thought that Paulson had a chance to just get rid of the queens right away and just play the move queen a6. Just play it and see if you can get the queens off the board and probably play an equal position. But he doesn't do that. He wants to trade the queens, but rather than try to do it right away, he played rook a2. And rook a2 is designed to cover the c2 square and then trade the queens on c2. But there's a problem with that. And Morphy took advantage of that by playing rook a to e8. And you see the harmony in black's position, and already white is starting to get into trouble. Now, I use the word harmony. If you look at the black position, you'll see that the pieces every single black piece has the potential to attack white's king side. The queen is attacking a bishop near the king. She's attacking a rook near the king. Both rooks have a battery here. One of them has the option of sliding to the left, attacking the king side. This bishop, while it's blocked, is on a diagonal that points toward the king and clearly the black bishop. Now look at the white side. How many of those pieces are in position to do anything? The strongest formation that white has is this battery here on the A file, but it's pointing at a pawn protected by a bishop. So all of this power, what's the nominal value? 14, 9 plus 5. What's it doing? It's pointing at a pawn. So you see how it really reduces the points of those pieces? Now here is a very, very key moment. First of all, you cannot play queen to c2 because of checkmate in 2 moves. So make sure you pause the video. Yep, just take the rook. When the king takes back, you checkmate on e1. So that prevented Paulson's idea. So now Paulson said, okay, you stopped one idea, but you did not stop the other. So now I'll play queen a6. But here, my friends, it's too late. And it's too late because of Morphy's, one of his most famous combinations. He just takes on f3 with his queen. An amazing move. And if you think about it, why he's doing it, the relative value of the black pieces is so great that he can afford to give up 9 for 3 because when you take back, the remaining black pieces are just overwhelming. Rook g6 check, king h1, bishop h3 threatening mate. And there were some defensive tries that Paulson could have played. I don't really want to show you them all here. It wasn't the purpose of the classwork. I'll just show you the rook got out of the way to give the king a square, bishop to g2, king g1, a beautiful discovered check, king f1. And here, believe it or not, Morphy missed the chance to play rook g2. And his idea was very simple. It's not just to take this pawn. If you give up your queen for the bishop, taking away one of the attackers, remember that's what Morphy just did. He gave up his queen for a bishop. That would run into simply rook takes h2. And look at the value. I mean, how many points do you give this bishop? Look at what it's doing. How do you stop rook h1 mate? You don't. Beautiful combination. And it's a great game to study to learn about this nominal and relative business. To put it in simple terms, just make your pieces stronger than your opponents. Beautiful chess. But anyway, Morphy just played bishop g2 check. King has to go back. A little discovered check. King in the corner. Bishop takes f2, threatening a mate on g2. Paulson had to give his queen away. And this is not the cleanest way to win. Morphy still had to work a little bit. But when these trades happened, he just penetrated with his rook. And white was all tied up. This pawn was pinned. So Paulson tried to put the rook on the first rank to play d4. But after rook h6, putting pressure on the h2 pawn, Paulson tried to get out with d4. Do you guys remember what he did? Bishop e3. He just resigns. There's no defense. This h-pawn's going to fall. If you take it, it's made in two. 1 and 2. Okay? So there's a lot there. I just hope that you guys all understand those terms. That's the main idea. All right? I hope you enjoyed the game. I'll see you in class on Sunday.